Thanks everyone for being here. I'm Ooleepeeka. Who am I? I'm Ooleepeeka. I was born in Inuit Nunangat, but I grew up mostly in Alberta, Treaty 6 and 7, but now I live in Ottawa. And I had the great pleasure of working with 5 of the 10 artists who are in Amisut over at the Guilde. Lots of you may have heard already or gone to see the show already. Yeah, super excited to be here and talk about their really amazing art. Yeah, so if we could just start maybe by introducing yourselves and maybe talk about how you started your art practice. Malaya, do you want to start?
Sige, Malaya yung ikalumuta yung ano nagapanulta nilukuluga palavimita. Welcome everyone, my name is Malaya Kisa-Knickelbein. I'm originally from Inuit Nunangat, and then my mom is from Panelists, Nunavut, and my grandmother is from Balaklik, which is an outpost camp outside of Qinnirajaattuq. So yeah, I'm an artist. I've been an artist seriously for like about 4 years now, but I always grew up around artists. I always grew up around people creating, so I felt inspired by mainly my ayahs, which is really nice. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Aedan Corey. Usually in my art I go by Ooleepeeka, which is my Inuit name. I grew up in Cambridge-Bay, Nunavut, Qinnirajaattuq, Nunavut. But my family, Malaya and I were, actually a bunch of us were actually talking about when you get started on where you're from, you kind of start yapping about it. There's so many generations to go back to, but primarily my family is from Qinnirajaattuq, and then, moved over to Qinnirajaattuq. I pretty much started art professionally around the same time as Malaya, but have always been very curious and creative. I'd say the same. I think we all grew up with a lot of that influence in our lives, so it came pretty natural to want to create things.
Hi, my name is Cassidy-Ann. I am an Inuk. Both of my parents are Inuk. My mom is from Sudluk or Coral Harbor, Nunavut. And my dad is from Mitipatalik, Pond Inlet. I spent a little bit at both places growing up, but I grew up mostly in Iqaluit. I never made art until last year. I was studying at Dell, studying law, and I took a gap year, and there were lino cut courses offered by Embrace Life Council in Iqaluit. And then there was like slipper making. I think there was, I can't remember right now, but I took a whole bunch with them. And then so I started my lino cut journey last year, but then I didn't actually make anything until I think February this year. So I'm still really new, but yeah.
Hi, my name is Mikak. My family is from Nain and Natsivut. My mom is from Nain and my dad is a settler. I grew up in St. John, New Brunswick. And I started my art journey, I'd say about around 2019, 2020. 2021 is when I went to the New Brunswick College of Craft and Design. And that's when I started learning lino cut on my own. So I'm a self-taught lino cut artist. And yeah.
Hello, excuse me. My name is Saelym. I am an urban Inuk from Ottawa. My family is from Baker Lake, Nunavut. My mom is Inuk side and my dad is French. I have been creating art pretty much my whole life, but I only ever really felt confident enough to put it out online in like 2019, 2020, and that's when I had my art page called Taqiq, and I also go by Taqiq. It was my first Inuktitut word as a child, so it feels very connected to me, and I use circles and moons in a lot of my work just to resemble back to that.
Thanks, everyone. So just some context behind the exhibition that's at the Guilde right now, titled Amisut, Multiple or Many. All of the artists are printmakers or digital illustrators, but all of you are multidisciplinary. And one theme that kind of ran through Amisut was family and kinship. And so I'm wondering how family and kin have shaped your art, and if you have anyone you admire or has had a big influence on you in that way. If anyone wants to start, or I'll pick on someone.
Yeah, I think like we said just a little bit ago that a lot of us grew up around people creating, and so the urge to kind of pick things up and start making was very natural. For me, I saw a lot of my Qinnirajaattuq growing up. She was a really talented seamstress, and often we'd go over and she'd teach us how to, like sew little things like pillowcases or little like duffel kamik. And so I think that was really the first time that I felt like mentored in something art related. Aside from that, as Uli mentioned, that a lot of us are multidisciplinary. So I also grew up a lot writing and drawing as well. And yeah, it feels like within our families and even outside of that, within our communities, there are always artists to look towards. I also grew up with people going around town selling their carvings. So I feel like, growing up within community is just being surrounded by art all the time. So it's hard not to kind of be inspired by that.
I think I grew up with a twin sister and a younger sibling, and with art, I just feel like we all really connected and learned through each other. So my mom, she lives in Maine. She hasn't really been a part of our life. So connecting to my Inuk side of the family it's been difficult for me, but seeing like my aunts and uncles, my aunt makes quilts, and my uncle, he does stone carving. So I guess watching from afar, from like Facebook and stuff, that's kind of my community, my sense of community. But through like just learning and growing with my siblings, I feel like we've really like created like our own little family and community with each other, even though we're not like directly connected with like our actual community.
A lot of my art, or all of my art, is very family oriented. So I made some prints of my little cousin. He's on a skidoo. He was, I think, 4, 5 years old, and he was on his little 120. And then I have another print of my uncle Mike. We were at a fishing derby back home, and he just he dropped off his family, set up like camp and whatever, made sure everyone was comfortable, and then he left on his skidoo, didn't say anything to anyone, came back maybe 20 minutes later with a seal that he caught. And so I made a print of a picture I took of him when he came back with his seal. And then there's another print that I made of my Qinnirajaattuq and my uncle as well from, I think, the same fishing derby. My Qinnirajaattuq was ice fishing, and then my uncle was like clearing the ice for her, so which is very, I thought it was very sweet because he was a grown man and she was just ice fishing, so content, and he was doing this act of service for her that she didn't ask for. And then there's another print of my uncle and one of his sons. They were out boating, and they were out seal hunting as well. And he had my little cousin had like a little gun that had no bullets in it. And every single time he saw a seal, he'd put his gun up and without aiming, pretended to take a shot and said, "I caught that." and he was maybe 6 at the time. So a lot of my art is very family oriented and culture. I don't know. It's like yeah, culturally relevant. Yeah, culturally relevant, and just kind of my day-to-day life back home. Because I spent a lot of time in Halifax where I was the only Inuk, so it's very hard for me to try and connect with my culture so far away from home and family. So, yeah.
I can really connect on that, feeling like the disconnect. When I was younger, I'm a sibling out of 6, so I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister, Kaylin. She did the throat singing at the swearing-in for Justin Trudeau, so she has always been an inspiration for me. Her growing up, always really inspired to do throat singing, and her performing, and Samantha Metcalf as well, was absolutely amazing. My uncles, as well as my aunts growing up, they all kind of dabbled in art, but never really took it like as a career, I guess. So seeing them create as a kid, I always was really excited and wanted to join in with them. My grandma had a room in the back of her house where it was her sewing room and had so many cool embroidery and half-made projects, and as a kid it felt like being at a candy store because I loved creating. I forget where I was going with this question. But connections to art, a couple Inuit artists I really enjoyed growing up. My mom absolutely loved the owl. I forget how to pronounce her name, but there's a specific owl that my mom honestly had everywhere in the house growing up, and just seeing that style of work really inspired me to slowly start creating. And one of my biggest inspirations is probably Sedna. She is very reoccurring in my artwork. And yeah, thank you.
I feel like I can relate to everyone here of saying like their art is really inspired by family. Mine is also. I remember always growing up on my mom's side. My ayahs would always be creating and sewing and beading, so it was very helpful. My ayah Pia, she's so talented. She makes a lot of slippers and paying. And then my ayah Rita just explores with everything she sees. Like her favorite app is Pinterest, so she'll like recreate it, but like make it more Inuk. And she only has sons, so I'm like her panik. So she gives me a lot of supplies, which I'm very thankful for. But yeah, I think I'm inspired by everyone here too as well, because it's helpful to navigate the art community when you have people in your circle and support with one another. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing all of that. The reason why I asked that is because some of the best memories I have with my siblings is me as an eldest sister making them be involved in projects with me. The last time we hung out, my dad had a bunch of all of his vintage clothes in a box. Some of them were sealskin vests, so I got my 2 brothers to go out and put them on, and I took a bunch of photos of them, and then I did a digital illustration over top, and then we were just like hanging out and listening to music, and it was so fun. So that's what I really love about all your work too, is how you embed family in it. Yeah, so thank you for sharing all of that. We were talking about being multidisciplinary. All of you create in many different ways. I'm wondering if there's a medium that you haven't used that you are interested in exploring, or maybe have dabbled in. I can't commit to anything, so I'm always trying new things. So does anyone want to speak to something that they want to try in the future?
I'm very interested in printmaking, so I really want to get into like lithography. That's something I've always been interested in, and like it's this, I feel like it's this very like historical thing, especially with Inuit art too, and I feel like that'd be something that would just be fun, like just anything printmaking related. I feel like I've touched base on pretty much everything, but I feel like it'd just be nice to do some lithography.
Do it.
I think with me, I want to explore a bit more with sewing with the sewing machine and also weaving because I feel really inspired by the weavers at the Ooleepeeka Center in Pang. Their work is so beautiful and they make like these huge wall hangings, and I would like to gain some of that knowledge.
Yeah, I checked out that book you showed me.
I've been kind of like starting dabbling in painting a little bit too.
Nice.
But yeah, I really relate to like not being able to settle on one thing. So I feel like my hands are always in multiple pots at this point. Like it's, yeah.
I really want to get into pottery and glass stain work. I also never do just one thing. A lot like my mom, growing up, she used to work on like so many pairs of seal skins at once, and then she'd get tired of it. And then she'd start making parkas, and she'd make so many parkas, and then she'd get tired of it. And then she'd start cooking so much like new food, like a lot of new food, trying out so many recipes, and then she'd get tired of it. And then she'd start baking, and she'd bake so much, and then she'd get tired of it, and then she'd move on to the new thing. And so that's a lot of what I'm like now. I'll work a lot on lino cut, and I'm like, okay, I can take a break, and then I'll try beading, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm done. And then I taught myself how to embroider, so then I started embroidering quite a bit, and I'm like, I think I'm kind of bored of this now, so let me try something new. But pottery and stained glass art is definitely at the top of my list.
Nice. I'm excited to see if you decide to.
A medium that I've been really interested in trying is probably animation. I do a lot of digital work, and I've slowly started using animation. It is quite tough to redraw a drawing at least 16 times for 1 second, but I'm learning with professors at my school. Another thing I'm really hoping to dabble into is possibly I had my thought and lost it. I really enjoy, my dad is a contractor, and he has always been building stuff my whole life, and one thing I always kind of wanted to do is build my own cabin. I get that's not exactly artsy, but it's something I've always wanted to do that's similar with building with your hands.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm wondering now, Aedan, you brought up how you're also a writer, and I know I'm mostly a writer, but I also do visual stuff, and they kind of influence each other. So I'm wondering if anyone can speak to maybe how writing has impacted your visual work. Not all of you may be writers, but maybe some of you can speak to that.
I could go ahead first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good exercise in perspective. With writing, I primarily write poetry, so I feel like poetry and visual art play off one another in the sense of they're not as they're not always as direct as other forms of art. And it leaves a lot up to interpretation of the viewer or the reader. So that's something that I enjoy, is finding ways to make my art more relatable to the audience, especially other Indigenous folks, other Inuit. My experiences may be similar to another Inuk's, but they might not be exactly the same, and I want to open that flexibility, or create that flexibility rather, for someone to look at that and go, wow, that's me too. So I think being both a writer and a visual artist gives me that perspective to be able to kind of like weave in and out of how direct I want to be and how many people I think will be able to relate to something.
Interesting.
I'm not as much of a writer, but one thing that I've been really trying to include with my art is naming things in Inuktitut to help me memorize different sayings in Inuktitut and then also help reclaiming the language and teaching other people. So with the print that's at La Guilde, it's called Pikhatikuluka, which is my precious friend. So that's one thing that I always try to aim for is naming in Inuktitut. And my Nana helps me so much. She'll always get around the messages being like, what's this in Inuktitut? What's that in Inuktitut? And then she'll answer right away. And I'm like, okay, thank you.
That's special. Does anyone else want to? Saelym, sorry.
No worries. I recently actually had my first writing ever published. I did a work with Canadian history, and I ended up illustrating and writing a story called Atatatsiak's Legacy, and we go in talking about the amazing mathematical equation of the igloo and how it has I'm nervous now. I haven't posted about that story yet. I'm excited to share with everyone. It's going to be printed this November, actually.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I really love to draw like that awareness to our stories. Growing up in the South, it was me and my sister were the only Inuks in school. We had other First Nations students, and we got to learn more culture through like Ottawa Inuit Children's Center or items like that, but to really be able to see yourself in like either artwork or writing is something beautiful.
For sure. Anyone else? No? Okay. I know for me, poetry and it having no rules kind of frees up the imaginative part of my visual side of things, so that's what I like about that. It works in a way that telling a maybe more coherent narrative-based story does, and maybe, just more experimental with language. Thank you. So next question maybe. What challenges have you faced in your art? And then I'll ask a follow-up question, kind of, what do you wish would change in the arts? And maybe those are connected and maybe they aren't.
Some struggles I've faced with my art is just not having enough time. And I feel like in a day, it just feels like to survive, like living, like working full time and then trying to make art. It feels incredibly difficult at times, and especially when big things like this happen, it just feels like I wish there was more time in the day, or I wish there was more spaces that I had to like be able to make art, and just running into like issues that seem like they're very small, but at the end of the day, like it adds up, like all the time missed, or like little things that do get missed, and I feel like just like not being in the community as well, not being around like family and stuff, or like other Inuit artists. Like I feel like it's challenging to feel seen and to feel like my art is understood in a sense. But yeah, that yes.
Sorry, just to repeat the question, it's challenges and what we'd like to see different in what you want in the arts. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think there are many challenges for artists, like funding, access to resources. Those are the two big ones that pop out to me. And resources can look like anything, like access to knowledge. Knowledge is a resource that I find really helpful within my art. So like, and as time as well is a big one too, for sure. And yeah, I think what I'd like to see changed within the arts sphere. And I think we're on our way there, is the idea of what Inuit art can be. I think within the Inuit art community, there is like this acceptance of new forms of art, that we can make whatever we want, and it's Inuit art. yeah, but I think there is still kind of some expectations placed on us from outside organizations or outside audience sometimes, that it's like, oh, well, that doesn't look exactly like how I picture Inuit art to look. And so that can be a challenge too sometimes, navigating that aspect of the art world, I find, for sure.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. A lot, I don't know. I've struggled a lot with figuring out how to price my work. Am I asking too much? Am I asking too little? I want to compensate myself for my time, and also this is how I make a living. But I don't know, just pricing work is very hard. And another thing too, I agree about Inuit art being made by Inuit is Inuit art. I remember, like, at some craft fairs, there'd be people coming up, looking at my table, and then I remember there were these two ladies. I think it was the mom and daughter, and they really wanted to buy one of my prints, but they were like looking through the exact same print, like connected, and I remember, I think it was the daughter or the mom was like, oh, how about this one? And they all looked exactly the same, in my opinion. And then the daughter was like, oh, no, I don't like that right there. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. So some unnecessary comments like that as well, especially for a new artist like myself, where I haven't been a full-time artist for a year yet. So a lot of pricing my work, and then just finding the confidence to make what I want instead of what I think will sell as well.
I feel like I really relate to that. Another challenge that I find I have is having the space to do art. I feel like I'm always moving around, always doing something different, and then having to try and sit down and do beadwork or printmaking or painting. It's a struggle that I find, and trying to remind myself, like, this is my space, I can do this here, this is what I want to create, this is how I'm going to do it. And getting a little anxious, but I have support systems like my brother and family members in Aedan, which is really helpful. So yeah.
Can I repeat the question?
What challenges have you faced, unless you wish would change?
Some challenges I definitely faced in the beginning was my own anxiety. I would get really nervous about posting my work, which actually took me so long to even make a page to share my art. I've always loved creating, and just that big step to really put your work out there to public eye, to be interpreted however people will interpret it. I think that was a big challenge for myself to get over that little bit of nervousness. But definitely time. I feel like I've been very busy doing school, and then being able to take my mind back and like slow it down to create something that I want to show and doesn't feel like I made it just to get something done. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all of that. Speaking of making a page for your work and showing it online, I love following all your work on Instagram, so I'm wondering how you've navigated kind of promoting your art on social media, and whether that has been mostly positive, or if you've had bad experiences that you're okay with sharing, or just, yeah, being online as an Inuk artist. Yeah. Well, for me, I don't always respond right away. I gotta learn how to respond. And I remember, like, I also want to try and figure out how to navigate this, like, work-life balance where I work from home, and I also need to remind myself that I deserve a break. So I've been trying to figure out, like,
if I want to work over the weekends or not, because it's just so easy. Like, all of my stuff is right there, and it's looking at me. I'm like, yeah, I could make something right now. But then I burn out faster that way. And so responding right away and just posting consistently. I don't always want to post. I don't really like being on social media. Or having a presence on social media. So that's been a really big struggle for me.
I kind of want to piggyback off of that and say, like, I feel the exact same way when it comes to social media. In my sibling, we started like this screen printing thing, and they're mostly control of the social media, so they would do like promotions to promote the work, and for me it felt a little overwhelming to get all of these like notifications. So it's something to get used to, is like social media being a way to connect with people and being very instant, I feel. And it's something that I am just also not very fond of, is just like posting and like being perceived online as well. It's just, I know it has to be done, so I do it, but I haven't really found a way to like promote or like show my art in a way that feels like presentable as a product online. I just find it's been very difficult to adjust to like just a regular social media, responding to like your friends versus like responding to people who are interested in like purchasing art or like interested in the art.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Inuit are naturally like pretty shy with promoting themselves, so it's just kind of how I feel too. I remember when I first started up my art account, it was actually under a different name, Kulu Creations, just to like get it started, and it was good for a while, but then I was like, is this really how I want to present myself? And I started talking like with my family and some of my friends, and then I switched it to Qinnirajaattuq because it had a lot more connection to me personally. Growing up, my family would always go camping there. But I'm still also trying to navigate with posting consistently and responding right away. But one thing that I've started is like not putting any pressure on myself. So like if I make a pair of earrings, I used to like do like a whole setup and try to make it aesthetically pleasing so people can share and like enjoy it. But now I create to just create, and sometimes like I don't post my earrings, I don't post my prints, they just kind of happen and they're created. So it's nice to put less pressure on myself.
I definitely agree. I think sometimes the immediacy of social media feels unnatural in a lot of ways. To be connected to basically the whole world at all times is a little bit stressful. So yeah, definitely I think learning how to prioritize like self-care within that, and like setting boundaries, like work-life boundaries for sure, has been a challenge, as well as finding the ability and the skills to connect in a way that feels authentic but also is respective to the audience. I don't as well, I think as well, because I also do Inuit tattoos, as do some others on this panel. I think there can be sometimes issues with sharing that kind of content on social media, because non-Inuit and non-Indigenous folks will come and be like, oh, you do tattoos, tell me all about these, and sometimes it's good to educate if you have the space to do that, but like it's not, we shouldn't feel obligated to have to do those kinds of things. And also, Inuit tattoos are for Inuit, and not everyone feels comfortable with sharing what their tattoos mean. And I'm definitely, like, I've gotten a few messages like, oh, can you tattoo me? And it's like, obviously a non-Inuk, and I'm like, well, no, this isn't exactly for you. So I think as there's also a sense, sometimes when you're out on social media as an artist, in any medium, there's this, there can be a sense of entitlement, I find, from the audience of your work sometimes, that they deserve, like, not, I don't know, I feel like I'm getting into some weird territory here, but there's a sense sometimes that you owe everyone everything. that can be really difficult to navigate, because to be authentic to myself, I like to give as much as I can to people, but it can lead to burnout really, really quickly.
When starting my social media page in like 2019, 2020, the first couple months were kind of hectic. I felt like I was trying to figure out a posting schedule or trying to like map it in between my life and answer people. It definitely takes a learning curve. Even now, I have a hard time keeping up with a consistent schedule because I'll forget to post, or I'm like catching up on assignments or something. But I really enjoy the connection of social media. I've been able to meet so many people and connect with so many other Inuit organizations or Inuit groups, as well as just share my work. I've reached a greater audience than I would keeping my art in person. And honestly, I get so excited to post, to just share my work with everyone. When I see like the first person like it, I was like, oh, they've seen it now, it's up. And seeing everyone's username or people that I've known for a while like my work, I'm like, oh, they like my work. I even like, it's really nice. It's connecting to know like the followers that I have, I also eventually follow and will grow as acquaintances or friends. Yeah, that's the fun part of social media for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you all spoke to the energy that it can take, and that it may give as well, which kind of leads me to think about what maybe each of your creative processes look like, whether you're like constantly creating every day, or if you have periods where you don't, or if you're switching up. I'm curious about your processes as artists, if anyone wants to start on that.
So I like to create art every day, but for me, it feels, sometimes it can be small, so I crochet as well. I'll do like a row of crochet or a couple rows. I try to kind of shake it up so I'm not constantly doing the same thing. I feel like it's easy to burn out if you're just focused on one thing and like focused on, I guess, a bigger picture, but I just like to keep my mind creative and keep creating just so I don't kind of like lose that feeling of creativity. It's something that like really carries me through life, is just creating.
Sometimes it's small for me too, like even just talking about what I want to create. I'm like, okay, that's enough for today. Like maybe I'll go back to it tomorrow or next week. But right now, like talking about it and getting the thought out of my head is enough. And then sometimes I'm on a roll where I'm making a lot of prints, or I'm beading a lot, or I was sewing for a bit. And then so I just kind of, I don't know, I don't think I have a method to my madness. I just do whatever works for me.
Nice. I try to create every day, and one thing I've been doing at work is during lunchtimes, I've been teaching my coworkers how to bead, which is such a fun like team bonding experience. So like they're almost done their poppies, they're almost done like their beaded earrings for like their eye bucks and stuff like that. So it's been really fun. I tend to create whenever I'm procrastinating on something. Like when I was packing for this trip, I kind of got like overwhelmed, so I stopped and I did like a watercolor painting of a clam for my dad. And another time when I was trying to get ready for an art market, I kind of like procrastinated and I painted Baby Yoda for my aunt. So I try to create every day, but if not, then that's okay too.
I feel like the creative process is kind of like a wave. And that in community with other artists, it's something I've found very common for a lot of us, is that a lot of the artistic process happens up here. It can be hard for other people to be like, oh, you're actually working, but like there's thousands of little ideas circulating around my head, and it can feel kind of overwhelming to get those all down. So I agree with Cassidy-Ann that sometimes even just talking about it, even just speaking an idea to life, basically, is enough for that moment. I think, yeah, especially as someone who has many projects on the go at all times, it can kind of be like, okay, well, what can I do for myself right now? Like, how can I create for myself rather than for like the production of something? So sometimes that just looks like drawing just to draw, even if it's something that I wouldn't necessarily like want to make into a print to sell, or writing just to write, like about an experience that I've had. Journaling helps a lot as well. So yeah, finding that kind of balance of creating for me so I can create for others has been really important.
I feel like I try to create as often as I can. I notice a lot of the time if I'll be in school, I want to have something with my hands, so I'll either be beading or drawing or sketching and listening into class, and it just helps me like focus more on what's happening. But my creative process, I totally agree with everyone. It's very, I want to say hectic, but also like when Aedan said waves, I really like connected with that, because at times I have the most amazing idea, but I go sit down and start my work and I feel like I'm frozen. I'm like, okay, no, I can't work right now. And then I'll try to start something else and like have multiple projects open at once, so that if I feel tired with one or I get burnt out of like beading, I guess, I can start working on a digital drawing or items like that, just to keep myself moving in a way without feeling so connected to one piece.
Nice. I'm gonna kind of switch gears, and so another kind of theme that runs through most of your work is connection to place. So I'm wondering, how can you see connection to place in your work, or how it's embedded? And then a lot of you have lived outside of Inuit Nunangat before, or do now. So I'm wondering how that has influenced your work. Yeah, and also home, the idea of home. So kind of 3 levels to that, but just talk about place.
My connection to place, being raised in Ottawa, I would always feel like I want to connect to my culture more, and I didn't really find a way until I was learning from my elder, and they were teaching me about our traditional tattoos, and that really inspired me. Almost all of my drawings and my work have duni in it, either on the person or moving like energy, which have their own stories. Sometimes I'll add like a little square to my duni, and I'll think of like my house or a house that really has meaning for me. And in my drawings, I try to add that. But that's the first part of the question. Can I hear the second again? I got nervous talking.
Your idea of home, or living in the South, or yeah, just anything you want to talk about.
Of course.
Yeah.
Living in the South as well, I've always really wanted to go back up north. I've always, like, my family is from Baker, but when I was around 14, I did a exchange to Whale Cove, and stepping off the plane in Rankin, I truly, like, felt like I was home, which is cool, because it was the first time I was back up north since I was, like, a baby. And that connection, it feels like it follows with you. You can make your home where you are, but you always have your, like, I want to say blood feeling of where your home is.
Yeah.
I think that's something I've been thinking a lot about recently as well. My parents recently moved from my hometown to Ottawa, so there's less kind of access for me now to get back home. So thinking about that idea of what does that mean for me? What does home look like? Is Ottawa home? Is Qinnirajaattuq home? Is Nunavut as a whole home? And I think what really comes to the forefront for me is about where do I have community? where can I go that I feel surrounded by others who know me, who I feel comforted by. And as well as that, I think there's an aspect in there as well about connection to the land. I think even if I'm on a different, like in a different part of the territory, or even in Ottawa, if I'm out on like in the forest or something like that, like there's that connection to the land that feels really important, that feels really grounding. Yeah, so I think that's what I'm working with now, around that idea of home can be multiple places, and maybe not even just what we have an idea of as a place, but also people, also land, like where can we be and how can we ground ourselves wherever we are, kind of thing. But I've heard in several other panels so far that the idea of like going away and kind of feeling this need to like moving away from your hometown and feeling a need to kind of connect more to culture because of that distance, and I find that really relatable. I think when I moved away from Cambridge, that it felt like art was an easy way to connect back to my roots, kind of thing. So that's when my creative career kind of started, was when I was thinking about the experiences I had, the memories I had of growing up, and it became a way to kind of go back in a sense. So yeah, I think they intertwine in a really interesting way.
Living outside of Inuit Nunangat, I lived in Halifax. I went to school at Dalhousie, like I said earlier, to study pre-law. Way back in the beginning. I first wanted to get into law so that I could do suicide prevention. In my mind, suicide prevention is it's not only about mental health. It's also about food security. It's about housing security. It's about reconnecting to our culture and revitalizing our language. So in my mind, if I went to law school and then went into politics, then it would be harder for people to ignore me because then I learned how to talk like a Hablunak pretty much. And then I burned out really fast because when I was in Halifax, I was the only Inuk. And even though my roommates were from Nunavut as well, they weren't Inuit. Like they had grown up in Nunavut, but they just weren't Inuit. So there were some things that they couldn't understand. And then there were a lot of suicides happening every single semester. So then I burned out really fast, and then I went back home, and that's where I started making art. And then so I think that's just kind of embedded in my art some way or another.
I think home for me has been a very hard place to find, especially growing up away from my community. And I feel like I really found a home within my art. It really grounds me to be able to be creative. And sorry, what was the question?
Connection to place, land, home. Yeah, you're talking about it. You're good.
And yeah, I just feel like for the past couple years, like I've been moving around back and forth from 2 different places, and it just feels like it's really, like no matter what, it's been really difficult to find a connection to home, and just feeling so displaced from the community and from everyone. But I just feel like home is really just wherever I am and wherever I can create and wherever I feel the safest, which is around other Inuit.
I wanted to piggyback off of that because I feel like I can really relate. I grew up with my mom being a social worker, so we always traveled to each community. So I grew up within each region in Nunavut, so it's hard for me to really find that sense of belonging, that sense of home. But I'm very thankful that my dad was based in Iqaluit, so that's like my home base. I find when I'm in Iqaluit, my art
flows a lot more freely and it comes a lot more naturally, and I want to do it a lot more consistently. Like, for example, this summer, the moon was just there to like welcome you, and I would hang out in the backyard and either embroider or I finish my print. So it's helpful that way, but home is also with people. So whenever I'm south, I tend to connect with friends like Aedan or Cassidy-Ann, and it's helpful to help the process of art flow better.
Yeah. Beautiful, thank you. Okay. I guess maybe a last question. I have to check the time. I'm so sorry. Where do you see the future of your art going, ideally? And then what's your dream kind of project, if you can share anything?
I would really like to do more work with other Indigenous artists and other Inuk artists. I read this book called As We Have Always Done. It's Indigenous Freedom Through Radical Resistance, and I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but it's by Liam Bedasomo Simpson, and she talks about it in the book about constellations and connecting with other Indigenous people. But I just feel like that really spoke to me, and last night that was something that was talked about at. I'm losing my train of thought, but anyway, I just feel like in the future, I'd love to like connect with other Inuit and really like create something like with other people. Like, I just feel like it'd be a really fun thing to like do, is just work with others.
Yeah. I really love that book too.
I can relate. I think I'm in my like collaboration era, so that's one of my favorite things to do. And just to collaborate with my friends, because it helps you see art in such a different perspective. Like, I wouldn't use that color combo of beads, but it's so beautiful, or that style. So I think right now my favorite thing to do is like collaborating, and that's what I'd like to do in the near future. And hopefully my dream project is to make some weave tapestries. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll see that in a few years.
A big dream of mine is to refine my lino cut skills. So adding more details, making my lines straighter and thinner. I also want to learn how to crochet. And then I want to sew with sealskin more. I find that's where I really enjoy sewing. I also want to learn how to make my own clothes too. I bought some patterns, and they're just kind of sitting there, so I think it's a matter of me prioritizing it, but one day I'll get to it.
Right now, a huge dream of mine, I'm actually attending Toronto Film School for graphic design. Prior to that, I was just a digital illustrator, and I would do my work on my iPad. Even before that, I only used my phone and my finger, and that's how I really got started posting my work. And just continually growing from there. When actually speaking with Toronto Film School, I spoke a bit about wanting to become a graphic designer for Indigenous companies or Indigenous artists to be able to create their brand layout and really help them get to the standard level of a lot of businesses right now. Because even like there's a business here, she goes by Queen of Ottawa. Her work is amazing. I love her beadwork. We actually spoke about even doing like a graphic design one day, and like just being able to connect with other people on that level to help them and like learn their stories and really put that into their work is something I dream about. And I'm in my third term right now, almost done. But a dream project I have for myself is probably like a multidisciplinary. I really enjoy sewing and beadwork, as well as painting. And I'm hoping to figure out a way to put like my digital work as well as physical work together in a meaningful project. And I'm hoping to have collaborators as well. I just get really anxious, especially, talking or meeting people. I'll go red and get hot, so don't mind me like fanning myself. And also just being here. It's been really great to see like new views on art, because everyone's still growing. Like, art is something where it's like a lifelong journey to learn. You have so many different visual arts, physical, and I just really love learning more about the arts.
For sure.
I feel like I have too many ideas. This panel could go on for hours, I feel like. But I think what comes down to the core of it is connection and collaboration with other Inuit. I think just working towards some sense of connection in whatever way that may look. I think there's this sense of responsibility as well to our communities and to those around us, that it feels really important for me moving forward in my work to have that as one of the things at the forefront, and like, how can this benefit other Inuit or my community or, my family, my friends? What way would that look? I think those things are at the primary goals. But that could look many ways. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you. I feel so grateful to witness everything you have to say. But I think we have some time for audience questions. If anyone has a question, I'll bring you the mic. Okay.
So, as Indigenous people, taking up space is incredibly important. Being seen again in a place where, if you don't do that, as a person who's a settler, we kind of, unless we're making the effort, we don't really see, right? So how does that affect how you make art and your experience in this space existing?
In the beginning, I noticed that some of my artwork wasn't really being perceived online, and mainly Inuks would like it, and I wouldn't have more of a group view. And then I noticed when I started being more bold and really like taking my own like self into my work, I guess, like really authentically being myself, I started to be more viewed, but really having to like get out of that mindset, like, I don't want to post because I'm nervous how I'm going to be viewed. I noticed like that part of myself, really unlearning it to be able to feel authentic, helped me get more views in that way. Yeah. Thank you.
The people that get it, get it. I think it's kind of one of the things that I've had to learn, that I don't have to over-explain myself or my culture within my art, because that's not why I'm making it. Like I mentioned before, that it feels really important for me that when others see my art, that they can find some sense of relation to it. And so if you're not able to do that, then maybe my art's not for you, If you can find something in it, that's great. That's what I want. But also, I'm not going to push anyone or push myself too hard to make that happen if that's not a good fit. So I think that has been the biggest thing for me, is coming to that conclusion.
I remember one time I was invited to go to be a vendor at a craft sale back home in Iqaluit. How it was explained is that it was invite only for the vendors, and then they were flying people up for this event that was happening back home. So it was also a closed craft fair. So it's just those people that they were flying up, and it made me feel like I was almost like a token Inuk, where I was selling my art. Rather than sharing it, it felt like I was very much on the spotlight, and my art had to look a certain way so that I can make money, rather than me sharing myself and my experiences. So it just felt very weird. And luckily, I think it was just that one craft fair. They also told us multiple times to share it on our social media. It was very interesting, and it felt so weird, like feeling like I was making myself presentable for non-Inuit so that they can like me or they can like my art, which I really did not enjoy because that's not why I make my art. So that was, yeah.
I think for me, all I ask is for settlers to like come with an open mind and to admire the work that we do, because it's not, I think people think it's like a one and done thing, but there's so much thought and so much emotion that's put into our work and so much meaning, and there's a lot more depth. So like if you see any of our prints or beadwork, you're like, oh, that's beadwork, that can be like $10, but realistically, like you think of the thought pattern, the thought process and like the different patterns and color variations and anything that can come in between. Yeah, it's all the knowledge that has been passed on to us. So I think for me, when I first started art, I used to over-explain myself, and I'm trying to learn how to like take it back. But yeah, just come with an open mind and admire.
Don't mind me. Like, I just wanted to make a comment. I really relate to what you guys were speaking about of like being an artist and trying to navigate like sharing your art online, all those like weird interactions, as well as like the anxiety of posting or things like that in that nature. And I really enjoyed hearing your perspective, and I just wanted to say keep it up. Like it's really, as an fellow artist, like it's so inspirational and motivating to see others create, and it's like good medicine, man, and it's motivating. Like once I see others creating, I'm like, oh my God, I would have never thought of that, or I love how this turned out, or it's just really great, and I just want you guys to continue. Yeah, that's all. Victor.
I think she said already most of what I was going to say, but just hearing you guys talk, and looking at the title of the panel, I was just thinking that it needs to be rethought or changed the title to something like Inspirational Young Inuks, because I think this was the most inspirational panel I've listened to, and all of you are, from what I can hear and how you answered the questions, are wise beyond your years. So I really enjoyed it, and it was very, very inspirational. Thank you.
Mana, thank you. I also find you all very inspiring as an emerging artist myself. Not so much a question, but a tip is you can schedule your posts so you can sit down and just like get up to like a couple months done all at once, and then you don't have to think about it again, which is also hard to do, but then once it's done, it's done.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh,
just a quick comment. I just want to tell you what I'm seeing. Like, you're all so strong and confident and powerful, amazing out night. And yeah, I just want to say I'm so proud of you. And I really wish my daughters were here to see what I'm seeing. So keep up the good work. And I want to find each of you online to follow.
Oh my gosh, thanks everyone. I think it's...
I want to say thank you guys all for being here and listening as well. It's really inspiring to have people hear us and really be able to talk to us back. One thing I notice on social media, I'm a bit more of an introvert when I get in person, but it's lovely hearing and seeing you guys and feeling that energy that you guys bring back to us. It's kind of what I crave for. I love connection in our community.
Um,
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.